All right, let's call this meeting. I guess let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, are there any comments from the audience on agenda or items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, does anybody have any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar? None. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move the consent calendar.
I'll second that. And the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, seeing no consent items brought forward, moving on to 6A, C. Oh, and also we are going to be opening this for a public hearing after your presentation.
We'll go ahead and open it.
Actually, yeah, we'll open it.
So, having the public hearing open to receive comments regarding the designation of the secondary clarifier number 1 rehabilitation project as substantially complex under Public Contract Code section 7201. So, basically, we need a little bit of background. We have 2 secondary clarifiers at the wastewater treatment plant. We have finished rehabilitation on secondary clarifier number 3. We're currently in progress on secondary clarifier number 2, and we still have secondary clarifier number 1 to complete next summer. We have gone through this process for both secondary clarifiers 3 and 2. We declared them substantially complex. It allows us to hold a 10% retention on it, at a minimum of the first 50% of the work on the project from the contractor, as opposed to 5%, which is what is allowed on non-complex projects through Public Contract Code. We've done this in the past just because these are complicated projects for us. There's quite a bit of work that is involved in it. It involves replacing the entire foundation of the structure. It's got mechanical work, it's got electrical work, it's got structural work. So those are in line with what the district has outlined as part of the reasons for why we can do this. Back in 2012, the board adopted resolution number 2904-12 that set out the criteria that allows us to name a project as substantially complex. And so for this project, basically we meet 3 of those criteria. We only need 1. But the 3 that we meet are the 2 or more different trades or subcontractors are anticipated to be involved in the construction of the project. The project involves instrumentation, controls, and mechanical equipment, and the construction schedule is a significant concern because of the compressed construction season within the Lake Tahoe Basin. And based on our history with SC3, where we had all the construction there, I think we have really determined that this is definitely a complex project for us. So that is kind of the background on why we want to name this a substantially complex project and require a 10% retention limit. And then in addition to that, I'm asking today for the board's authorization to advertise for construction bids on this project. We hopefully will be advertising by the end of the month. Timeline is really to have it out on the streets by September 23rd, as we get the actual date in our calendar, and have the bidding in early November and notice to proceed early January so that we can get going on May 1 for construction of the secondary clarifier. Any questions?
Any questions from the audience or comments? Start the public hearing.
I actually got one question, and this is kind of online, I suppose, but looking at something like this, is there any negative implication with this designation that it just you wouldn't be concerned?
So we haven't found any in the past. We haven't seen, contractors balk at it or anything like that. Most of them are, used to this happening, especially for our projects. And so it hasn't had any negative side effects for us to date. All right. So I will read the requested board action. Let's see. So
We should probably close the public hearing first.
yeah. Okay. Let's close the public hearing. Okay. So the requested board action then is to pursuant to the facts of the public hearing, find the project substantially complex and require a 10% retention limit, and to authorize staff to advertise for construction bids for the project. And just for the record, the project is a secondary clarifier number 1 rehabilitation project.
So moved.
Oh, second.
We have a motion and a second. And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Item 6B, wastewater treatment plant. Solar array, Julie. And we are again opening this item for public comment.
Very good. So I'm here today to hold a public hearing to receive public comment on the environmental document for the 1.3 megawatt solar array that is in planning and design for the wastewater treatment plant. The district is the lead agency for this project. We did not ourselves develop the environmental document. That is the responsibility of Stratton, the solar developer. But they worked with Howie Roick. Rob Roick is actually on the line in case there are any questions that you as the public might have about the details of that environmental document. The document was filed with the State Clearinghouse on August 2nd. It is a negative declaration, and we have not received any comments to date on that document. The comment period closed on September 1st. In addition to filing the document with the State Clearinghouse, Howie Roick also did some direct additional outreach to the local Native American tribes. They're all listed in the agenda item, and we have not received any comment back from them either. So you are all very familiar with the project in general. We will be constructing a 1.3 megawatt DC solar array in the forest behind the wastewater treatment plant. That will require the removal of around 9 acres of forest. And there is a timber harvest plan that has also been developed in support of that project and has been submitted to CAL FIRE. So that part of the permit process is also underway. The application has been submitted to TRPA for the development of this parcel area. And we just last week had a site visit with Paul Nielsen from TRPA to look at some of the particulars of the project, and our staff and Howie Roick are going back and forth with TRPA to resolve some of those comments and concerns. So things are definitely still moving. The kind of project schedule going forward is depending on how long it takes for us to get approval from TRPA. We may or may not be able to break ground this fall, so that kind of remains to be seen, but things are definitely moving in the right direction. The site investigations, I believe, are largely complete out there. Last month they did a pole test on helical tiles that will be used to support the array. And those passed, so they have the kind of details that they need for the design array itself. That's kind of an overview and update. Does anyone have any questions?
I just wanted to invite Rob Bruick if you have anything to add. To the environment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. Rob Bruick with Tahoe Associates. As Julie mentioned, we prepared the initial study and IEC for TRPA. And the results of the environmental documentation were we identified only one mitigation measure that was needed, and that is only if tree removal is going to occur between February and August. So just wanted to point out the best time to cut the trees that Julie mentioned for the solar array would be starting now and through the end of January. So that is one of the recommendations in the document, is that the tree removal at least be conducted outside of nesting seasons for birds.
Great. Thank you. Any discussion from the board?
Just a couple questions. One, I'm really excited to be here. Great work, all. Although I'm kind of souring on this whole solar thing, like, I know that can change for everybody, but no, I mean, really credit to everybody. Great job with the environmental doc. Just kind of in terms of timeline. So, you know, with time of year, by commencing this year, were you referring to just the tree removal component?
So my understanding is if they are able to get the foundations into the ground, that the rest should be able to commence relatively quickly and without disturbance once they get out of the ground. So my most recent understanding from Sam at Satin was that they could continue the installation of the panels for the array well into the late fall. And so, yeah, it just sort of depends what happens with the weather and their ability to get foundations in the ground, whether they would be able to proceed then with the arrays panels immediately, or if that would need to be pushed into the early part of like next spring.
Because I guess what I'm going is like kind of looking at the time frame. If the TRP approval happened after October 15th, and so now you're in the grading moratorium, but then you're looking at an August kind of window in terms of habitat, the tree removal, that even if grading can commence, the trees sometime before, you know, this early winter, when conditions allow.
Yeah, and I'm sure that'll be part of the conversation as we see how the remaining permitting items kind of all come together. Like, okay, now what does the weather look like? What can we do? What sort of grading season exceptions might we be able to obtain from TRPA that allow us to proceed? So, yeah, and, you know, under the power purchase agreement, they're supposed to be starting to deliver power to us in January. There is kind of a buffer written into that agreement already that kind of gives them room until April, but that, you know, is basically our winter, that whole time period. So it's not like that helps them a whole lot. So we may need to be coming back to the PPA and adjusting the terms of it once we see how this all plays out.
Okay. And then just another thing I was going to note is I virtually attended the city DRT meeting this morning in which this was discussed. Cuz is on that meeting, because always represents the district well. You know, everyone was supportive, right? It was a very kind of positive, no one asked questions. So no, I mean, I think this is just a function of kind of managing permitting process meets on the ground realities, and again, you guys have been doing a great job, so really excited that we're here and that we're going on today.
I have a quick question. What has the communication been with neighborhoods around? Just because it's going to be a pretty significant change to the forest that maybe they may have or near. Just kind of curious.
Yeah, so in conformance with the PRPA requirements, we developed a list of neighbors within 300 feet of the project. That was a list of about somewhere between 25 and 30 individual residences that were sent a copy of the notice of intent to file the environmental document. So those did go out at the start of the public review period. And I think I got one phone call from a neighbor who was interested in what we were doing with the trees. Like that. That's the only one. You know, last year when we had the CCC come through and help us with thinning some of the forest, the neighbors had an opportunity to take away rounds. It was not 9 acres of trees, but I think they were hoping for another opportunity like that.
So what was your answer?
It was, I will put you in touch with Scott and see what they're planning on doing with the trees.
What did, I guess you have a sense of how far to turn around on the approval of the THC, the harvest plan?
I don't individually. Rob, do you have a sense of that timeline?
Yeah, our forester, Bob Hutchinson, turned that in just about a month ago. They typically do their review in about a month or 6 weeks, and typically have a few changes that they request for the timber harvest plan. So his thought was by the end of September, we should have that turned back in and they should be ready to approve that document. Secondly, with CAL FIRE, we have to get a timber conversion permit, and they will issue that permit after the harvest plan is finalized.
And then do you have an idea what the app is going to do with the logs?
Miguel and Sam have told me that they're intending to find someone who will, cut the trees down, and that most likely that company would want to then probably sell the trees.
Okay.
And there was
as part of that agreement.
There was some mention of smaller trees or limbs being mulched on site and used for soil stabilization.
We're talking to TRPA and Jennifer Roman, the civil engineer, is working with them on the BMT plan to determine how much of that material we might need for ground cover.
Great. Any more from the board?
Playing kind of more worst case scenario in terms of kind of permitting timeline, weather conditions, and so forth. In the event that we weren't able to commence this project until the spring, so let's say May 1. In the event of that, what is our reality in terms of kind of tree cutting at that point? Is there another mitigation? Is there something we can do? Because what I want to avoid and be very thoughtful of now, where we don't get the permits in right, and
a 1 year delay.
Well, I want to hear why not define regulations exactly why. And so in terms of that, I want to be very thoughtful in that. In the event of that reality, that we put more thought in to develop, if possible, any mechanism to allow things to commence early in that season, because to your point, that's what's in the very circular nature.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The mitigation measure suggests that the best time to cut is, September 1 to January 31, but then if it needs to be done during the nesting season, there has to be a tree removal survey. Have to identify whether there are any existing nesting birds. If so, we need to make sure those are protected during the tree removal. So the other possibility is you would just do the survey. If it's early in the season, you would act before nests are started. We just would follow that procedure. If there were identified nests, those trees would have to be protected until birds had fledged.
No, I think that's a great answer, because in fairness to mental sanity, if we didn't start this till August as a result, that would confuse my mind. And so, no, I think that's great. Thanks so much for the clarity on that.
Great. I think that's all we have from the board. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this project? Seeing none, closing the public hearing.
All right, I am requesting that the board certify the mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact and authorize staff to file the notice of determination with the El Dorado County Clerk.
Make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, moving on to 16, Adrian. City of South Lake Tahoe.
All right, goodbye.
Bye, Rob. Second Street project.
Good afternoon, everybody. here to request that we reimburse the city of South Lake Tahoe for some work they've done on our facilities. It's all in association with a storm drain project that is falling over by apartments Second Avenue. During design, there was a lot of conflicts with our water system and our sewer system. We resolved a lot of those conflicts during design by moving where their storm drain was going. However, there were still conflicts existing. There were bid items and their contract to adjust our water lines and sewer lines accordingly. Upon potholing, we did find one major conflict that is probably the majority of the costs that are occurring. But their contractor completed the work to relocate our facilities in order to install their storm drain. And the work we did included lowering 4 water services, lowering a 4-inch main, doing a horizontal offset of a 4-inch main, and a large intersection, moving lines around, abandoning one. But the resulting cost is in the range of $150,000. They've done all of the work to relocate our infrastructure, but the last remaining piece is to lower and raise the iron associated with paving. The invoice that we've gotten right now is $129,000. The reason we did not enter into a reimbursement agreement with them is that we were anticipating costs to be under $75,000 originally, but we are above that now, and that's why I'm here asking for permission to reimburse them. Any questions?
I guess what was the reason for the deviation between the initial assumption versus the final cost?
During design, not everything was potholed. And then at one of the intersections, we had a lot of conflicts with two water mains that we had in the same street, along with a connecting water main. We ended up abandoning one of the water mains that was in that intersection, and we had 5 tie-ins to the existing water system. So that work in the intersection was in the range of $100,000, and that was really the big deviation from the design.
All good on the budget?
Good.
Okay. So the requested action is to authorize staff to reimburse the city of South Lake Tahoe up to $165,000 for the relocation of district facilities.
Okay, we're sitting at 129 now, and do we anticipate a little bit more?
We do, it's for the lowering and raising of the iron, which they have a good price for.
All right. Anybody want to move?
I'll move the recommended action.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, standing and ad-hoc committee and meeting on reports. Nick?
No report.
All right. Great. Excellent. Kelly?
Nothing.
I guess I'll just report, I don't know, Shelley, you're probably going to report on this, but we met with Kevin Taylor and his staff on last Thursday. We gave him a tour of DVR. It was kind of a quick round. It was really good. It seems like he was very interested in what's going on and how we're managing our wastewater. And so overall, it was good. I thought it was a good meeting. And I don't know if you're going to say something later on, but
Yeah, I'll add on a little bit.
okay, great. So I have any board member reports.
Just quickly, apologize for missing the last meeting. It was a slight delay, although it worked out well because I hung out with Chris Blue in the airport for a while. Small world type thing. He thought it was funny I was missing the meeting. But no, just really was looking forward to coming in today. Of course, the solar item being on the agenda, but really just people excited to be working with Keith, and then of course, Paul as the GM. I think this is just a great sign for the district. I'm really excited to go something like that, and great to have you on board. Okay.
No, just happy to be at the first meeting of change.
Fun, man.
Okay.
Just really quickly, wanted to, I passed this along via email, but just wanted to just let the board know that I did receive a call from, an owner of multiple laundromats. You know, the policy change we made a while back, that Ryan Lee brought forward, called with great things. You know, it was, I think, significant for their business, and he said, you know, he appreciated us recognizing kind of the increases in efficiency and all the things that Ryan noted in his presentation of changing that policy. So it's always good to hear back from the public and our constituents on, you know, how policy is affecting them day to day. I just kind of wanted to report that in a good way. Not always all of that stuff, but that was just great to hear, and I wanted to pass that on to everyone.
So I mean, I absolutely hate giving up revenue, just so you know. It would definitely be the right move, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I encourage, you know, us to continue to look at, you know, improvements to, especially aging policy and other things that, you know, we want to keep at the times and stay relevant obviously in our community. So, good job.
Yeah.
Moving on, 9A, budget rate update from Shelley.
Good afternoon. Jane touched on it, so I'll keep it brief. We toured Congressman Kylie around last week. You know, as the new congressman for our region, the goal really is to just highlight what some of our issues are and build that relationship so that if and when we have an ask down the road, he knows who we are and what we do. So we had toured him a few weeks prior around the Caldor fire area, talking water infrastructure for fires. We got to see him at the summit. So this was our third time hanging out, and what more beautiful place in the world to be than down in Alpine County. The main action item that we talked to him about is that we showed him, you know, you can't tour that facility without seeing the impacts from Tamarack and the flooding and landslide events. So we let him know that the FEMA disaster relief grants that we've been working on have been spectacular, that they go pretty quickly, that we're able to get those funds. And then one of the challenges is getting funding for through FEMA disaster mitigation. So we have multiple projects that we've submitted multiple years ago that FEMA has told us that we will, that we should plan on getting the money for, but it's just delayed. And one of those projects was a slope stabilization project out at Diamond Valley Ranch, which would absolutely help some of the landslides into our ditches that clog things up and prevent us from releasing from Harvey Lake reservoirs. So we're working with his staff. He offered to follow up with FEMA on our behalf, and so we're working with his staff on that. But I think the main part was just some FaceTime and building that relationship with our congressman.
And if I can just chip in here, I just want to thank Trevor and Jason and you, of course, and Paul. I think everybody represented the district very well, and they're very personable. I thought it was a really good opportunity just to, you know, shake hands and get to know them. So thank you for getting that together.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I just wanted to cover something related to water conservation. This week, there have been multiple media articles covering the state's water conservation standards and proposed reductions. And I wanted to provide some context in case you receive questions from customers. So right now, the state's target looks to be 47 gallons per person per day for 2025, and it ratchets down to 42 gallons per capita per day in 2030. And for the district to meet those goals, just looking at our straight up water production numbers, would require us to reduce by 14% by 2025 and 29% in 2030. And that's a lot. That's a big reduction. So at face value, that seems something, but the CRIT data that is provided doesn't take into account any of the variances that the state is offering. And so a variance that we've been really involved with developing with the state is the seasonal population variance, right? Right now they take just our full-time population, 30,000 people, times this gallons per person per day. And we all know that there are a lot more people in this town than our full-time residents. So, I believe that we are on track to meet these targets with the variant. Because when we were working with the state and their consultant, it brought our original 75 gallons per person per day down to around 42 gallons per person per day, which is on track. However, the state has been taking a very long time to finalize the variants and release the official tools, so we won't know for sure until it is released. But if you receive questions from folks about this, proposed 14 and 29% reduction, that's very high compared to the rest of the state. It puts us in the portion that needs to reduce the most compared to other water agencies. But with our variance tool, I think we're on track. So we're continuing to watch it. The state has invited us to be a presenter at one of their public hearing sessions in October, and we're following, we're following this regulation as well as some new proposals that are coming out regarding this regulation was for residential customers. There's new regulation that's being proposed for commercial, institutional, and industrial, which will be interesting and we're tracking and we're providing comments on. So more to come on this, but know that there is a lot more reporting in our future and that we're letting the state know how these regulations impact us in terms of cost to comply as well as staff time.
One question. Do we have pretty good numbers on visitors? And I'm looking at Nick. Seems like
there's kind of a lot of work going on right now because I think a lot of folks are in the same boat, depending on the industry up here, transportation funding and other things. That is all population-based, residential population-based, and as you know, as you pointed out, it doesn't reflect what we have to deal with and actually account for. And so I would suggest that we plug in with a lot of those efforts that are going on in terms of data and everyone using kind of the same information when they talk about either second home population, visitation, other things. And so I can help you, I'll point you in the right direction in terms of who's doing what.
Yeah, great point, Nick. Something that the way that this current tool is being developed for seasonal population variance, because it's for a water district, it looks at your hourly water use data for every single one of your customers for an entire year, and then there's some built-in tools to pull out irrigation use, right? Because even if someone isn't there, so it kind of divides up what looks to be irrigation use, and then looks at which properties utilize water, on a frequency level versus some that just use it on weekends or hours of day. So it's a whole, supposedly we're able to input data, the spreadsheet does all the work and calculates it out. And one of your counterparts at TRPA has reached out to me asking for the raw data, which takes like over a week for us to download, more than that, 2 weeks for us to download. So our IT department is working on updating our ability to download this data so that we're able to do the reporting. And what I told, I forget who reached out to you from GOPA, was I'm happy to share with you the results. Give me a minute, let us get this tool, put it together, and then we can share with you what we, from this particular tool, what looks to be full-time versus part-time.
That's great. Thank you.
So is the variance a law? In terms of, we're basically, we say we have a compliance issue at the state, but we're going to have a variance, so it's kind of irrelevant. And my question is that variance a law? Because if it's not, then we have to, at some point, plan for that future in which we're going to have to reduce water.
Yeah, so the two laws that were passed in 2018 under Governor Brown essentially said, State Water Board and DWR, you need to figure out a way to reduce gallons per person per day. You come up with what that number is going to be. Reduce indoor water use, reduce outdoor water use, reduce water loss. However, we recognize that there are, and you'll have to excuse me, I don't know the exact word, 6 variances that should be developed that address, and one of those is specifically seasonal population variance. So that is in the law, that they have to create a variance of some sort for seasonal population variance. The good news is when the state developed the variance, they worked with 2 water districts, and we were one of them. So the entire variance is built on our data and what data we're able to pull from our system and utilize. So it is a law that they have to have a variance. It's not written in law for seasonal population. It's not written in law exactly the formula. That's something the state agencies have to figure out. And so we're hoping that our work with the state agencies over the past 4+ years will result in the tool. We haven't gotten to see the final tool. So I expect that it aligns with what we've been discussing for the last multiple years with the water board, with DWR.
And I always have it there's a high level of skepticism I hold in terms of these types of things. In that regulation, again, my skepticism is not necessarily always drafted to the benefit of the people it's looking to serve, us being that kind of consumerist example. And so, I mean, as we look at this, I think we'll see how this all plays out, but then also the forethought as to what we would do if this doesn't meet or doesn't get us exactly where we want to be.
Right. And that's something that we're supposed to get the final tool a month ago. We still don't have it. The public hearing session is in October. And so we're not the only water district that has reductions to make and that are waiting on the finalizations of these variants to see where we land in compliance. And so I was on a meeting earlier this morning with Tahoe Region 3 with other Mountain County partners, Calaveras County Water District, Georgetown Divide, all talking about how those big reductions and presenting to the state this, how much is it going to cost to comply. So I agree. I'm trying. We've been involved in tracking it and very involved in providing input and guidance throughout to try to set ourselves up for success. That's just hot topic right now in the water conservation world, all these articles covering this regulation.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Are there any more questions? Yeah, have another opportunity to open up the black box, so to speak, and get a sense of what how the number, how the variance works, and how the calculations are.
Yeah. So Department of Water Resources took the first crack. They spent multi-years traveling around the state, holding all these public input sessions, came up with a big recommendation, presented it to the State Water Board. Now the State Water Board is tweaking things, and that's the process that we're in. They've tweaked some things, and they're putting it back out to the water agencies to provide comments. So that
check their math and all that stuff.
Exactly. That's what this October 4th meeting is all about. And we're at an advantage if they've asked us to be one of their panelists to present on how it impacts us at this meeting. And so my hope is that we get the seasonal population tool. And they told me that we're going to get it sooner than later, but we shall see that we'll get the plug and play. We were also really involved on the outdoor water use component of this. Remember, they did the aerial imagery and said we only had 1% irrigable area, which is just absolutely not true. And so working with them, that got bumped up to 14% irrigable area, which is more consistent with the rest of the state. So.
You know where I'm going with water. I don't have to say it.
And on the water and off piece, Steve, was, didn't you? Well, Steve did a good job for us. He worked really hard on that. So, I think that what I've learned through this multi-year, pretty painful process, I would say, of working with two different state agencies, it's been worth all the hours invested at the forefront to identify what our issues are, because if we hadn't been involved developing these tools, we would likely be in hot water to try to meet the mandates.
Sort of just as something not related to this, just what here's where we were in terms of the federal calendar as it related to the earmark. And so I don't know, I'm not 100% up to date with that calendar, so I'm curious where that's at.
Yeah, so that calendar is coming up at the end of, it's coming up, and the Congress is having a hard time agreeing on a budget, so I'm expecting them to pass a law that extends their opportunity to approve a budget so that they don't have to shut down the federal government. And the House and the Senate are still pretty far apart on what those earmarks will look like. So, Nick, I couldn't give you a gambler's bet on if those are going to pass or not. However, we are tracking them. In the House, there's still funding for our projects. In the Senate, there isn't. A concern about all earmarks is they're talking about if they pass these earmarks across the nation, that they'll that funding will come out of the SRF program, State Revolving Fund program. So all the states will get a lot less money in that pot, which is a big deal for us. We utilize that pot heavily for low interest loans and grants. So we shall see what the final shakedown looks like. Yeah.
Thank you, Shelley.
We do have one more staff report. I was going to provide an update on the Indian Creek Reservoir algae bloom, but Dan Arce, our lab director, was available today, so.
Okay.
So, good afternoon to the board. My name is Dan Arce. I don't have any opportunity to address you that much. It seems every time it looks just a little different. So, great. I think you have the screen over there. I'm here to talk about the harmful algal bloom problem, often just called HAB, at Indian Creek Reservoir. I noticed something about which I have talked to the board before, but I will assume that we'll start from scratch, and then at the end you may have some questions. I think we all know where Indian Creek Reservoir is in Alpine County. And as you know, we used to export our treated effluent, our tertiary effluent there, all the way up till 1982, which is now 41 years ago. It then became our responsibility to monitor, and we had certain TMDLs associated with it, which is another story. So as far as the harmful algal bloom, this is a problem that is not unique to this reservoir in the least. It is something that is a worldwide problem, and it is becoming bigger and bigger all the time. It is now affecting drinking water sources. Luckily, you know, Indian Creek Reservoir is a recreational reservoir, so we are not affected as far as drinking water goes. We have 5 sites which we monitor regularly, you know, just creatively named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me just show you a little bit of a summary of what we have. Now, Indian Creek is a wonderful place to visit. We are always happy when we have the opportunity to go there. When it looks great, it looks wonderful, you know, and before the Tamarack fire, when there was a campsite there, there'd be, you know, so 30, 40 people in the past recreating there, lots of wildlife and so forth. This is what it looks like on a normal enough day. This is, you know, 3 years ago or so. The water can be quite clear. And this is a picture we took just a few weeks ago, about a month ago actually. You can see our boat there, and you can see what looks like spilled paint. They always say that the problem looks like spilled paint. So, what is harmful algal blooms? They were often called blue-green algae. This is a misnomer. They are not a plant. It is not algae. It is a bacteria.
So when one deals with it, and I hope this works here. Uh-oh, well, you're supposed to be able to see how we often test for it. We have no IT person there. You will see in this person here, which is my hand, when I pick up that algae and I put it on my glove and I go like this, it becomes stringy, right? I can actually touch it. It's something material, and I can show it to someone, and that's a plant. It's made out of, it's not single cell organism. It's a whole bunch of cells together in their structure. If you were to do that with the blue-green algae, which I will now call cyanobacteria, you would see that it literally does look like paint. That you can go like this in your hand and it'll fold right through. None of it forms any form of structure. These are individual cells. Sometimes they might form larger colonies, but essentially you're looking at microorganisms, not a plant. Oh, there it is. All right, so like algae, and well, you won't get to see a more fun one. Yeah. So here I have the maximum toxin concentration we found in 2019. It is color-coded, and I will show you the color coding in a minute. This is in orange. So you can see that during the summer, all the maximum we got were all in August of 2019. This side over here, which is near the dam and the campground, this is when the campground was still going, was the highest, and it showed 11 parts per billion of a toxin called microcystin, right? So here is the trigger for warnings, which is a recommendation from the Water Board. So here's the toxin we're talking about, microcystin. There are hundreds of different types of toxins. These are the most common ones. When you read about this problem in the Tahoe Keys, they have a different mixture of toxins to worry about. But the one that we have always found at Indian Creek Reservoir is this one, total microcystin, which is a little family of toxins. You see here that at 0.8 parts per billion, which is quite a low concentration. I mean, even lead at this concentration wouldn't be considered a problem. 15 is the level for lead, or 5 in a daycare. You see here that we're at 1 part per billion before we have to put a caution warning in the body of water. Soon you're at 6, at which point we have an orange sign, tier 1, and then if one goes past 20, we're at tier 2. So you can see here in 2019, we have to put the orange signs. It's the first time we put signs around Indian Creek. We go to the next year, and this is what the yellow looks like, right? This is above 0.6. You basically should not drink the water. You should not let your dog drink the water. You can eat the fish, and you can still, you should stay away. The next level warning, you may not swim. They still say you can eat the fish and so forth. This is a toxin that, you would throw away the guts from the fish and you clean the fish and it's gone, all right? So then we have 2020, which was not as bad a year, right? There was what we call ICR1, which is the dam there, never actually reached that high. The highest we reached was almost at 20 there, or I guess almost at 20.0 at ICR CBO2. Now, something to note is this particular one, the highest one, that's what the water looked like on that day. You can see that it's not obvious. It's a toxin that is released by the bacteria. So it often happens that the bacteria are gone and it's a bloom. Yeah, depending on the time of the day or the day of the week, you will find a problem, you might go back 2 days later and it's gone, but the toxin remains. So clearly when we sampled that day, we didn't find that many actual bacteria, but the toxin was almost at the highest level. 2021, not so bad. This is around after the Tamarack fire, right? We had thought perhaps that all the debris, and as you know, after the Tamarack fire, there was flooding, there was a whole bunch of stuff that went into Indian Creek. The water didn't look great, but the frontal bloom, the cyanobacteria did not, I guess, take up the opportunity. We didn't see this much of a problem. All of us were crossing our fingers at this point that it was, okay, it's gone away. The infection has gone away. But and that's what it looked like in 2021 at the highest level. And then 2022 hit us like a brick. So you can see that over here we had a concentration of 338, 320. to remind you, the warning, the danger level is 20. So this is 15 times greater, right? So it was definitely a bloom. All the other lakes around Alpine County, Red Lake and Silver Lake, they also saw this problem, right? So by this time, it was still not showing its true colors here. You can see that the water looks okay enough. This doesn't look, those are called max, and that's what our harmful algal bloom looked like that year in max. This is where we had the highest concentration, right? Sometimes they go to the surface like that. And now and you can see the wet paint look there. And this is what the warning sign looks like now. Right? Basically, don't use the water, stay away. Don't eat the fish, don't swim, and so forth. This is what now I'm going to give you a month by month of what it looked like in 2023. So this is what it looked like in April. All of us happy enough. There had been times when the toxins survived over the winter. You know, we would break through ice and the toxins were there. This time, not so much, and you see that they were low. We didn't have to put up any signs. Looked nice enough. May, it's sort of starting to come up. It's important to note that between these two episodes, Indian Creek Reservoir had been flushed for the first time. My understanding is in about 6 years, since 2017. There was so much extra water from the last winter that we thought perhaps the problem had been flushed away, but nope. Here's June, trying to creep up. I mean, and it's you notice it's green and yellow. It's barely there, and just 4 weeks later, and then 8 weeks later, we're back in the red, and we have concentrations of 400 here at a new site. This is where we launched our boat, and you can see the wet paint look. You can see that there, and so forth. Very clear over there. We used to get a lot more calls from people who are recreating in the area. The number of the lab is on both sides. We have not yet received a call this year, and there are people there. It leads me to conclude that people are now sort of aware that they have to inform themselves. They know what the problem is. It is, it's interesting that when I talk to people who are not in the industry at all, at some point many people will ask me about, do you know anything about cyanobacteria or blue-green algae? It is something that the media has done a pretty good job as far as making people aware. And when I talk to the water board, and the water board is in charge of actually monitoring all the reservoirs, they are big on, buyer beware, if you will. Recreation is beware. It's on you to notice when your dog should recreate. It's on you to know, because these are blooms. They come and go, and it could be that a reservoir has been cleaned all the way up to now and suddenly has the bloom. So I think that's what we're seeing. Of course, now when we go there, nobody's actually recreating. We see hikers, but no one is no one's picking up fish. No one is really on boats or anything else, which does make us sad, because it is a nice place. The lab, as often, is rich in descriptions, but short in prescriptions. So I don't have much to tell you as far as what we could do about this. There are engineering solutions, such as putting shade in some places, not having dams where the wind might push debris towards them. And there are some things that one can add to the water, I have read, but I don't think it's anything in the realm of possibility that we would mess with a reservoir like to that degree. Flushing the problem out also seems somewhat problematic. The exit of Indian Creek is Indian Creek Reservoir is Indian Creek, and some of it is used by farmers, and it eventually ends up in Mud Lake. And I do remember when we had a harmful algal bloom problem in HPR, Harvey Place Reservoir, in 2017, and some of the farmers caught wind of it. They raised hell that we didn't let them know, that their cows were drinking this water, and so forth. So I don't know about just simply, fleshing it out. So here we are. Any questions?
So you mentioned, what's the correlating variable that is exacerbating these blooms? Is it a function of just temperature? Is there what is doing it?
We have hypotheses that we think might be the case sometimes. We had thought that the fact that the reservoir had been flushed in the early part of 2023 was a game changer, but it did not work. This picture here that you see in August 22nd, I was sad that we didn't get to the reservoir about 10 days earlier. I don't know if you remember, the early part of August was super duper hot. And I wanted to see how bad it could get. And I remember going there, driving there on that Tuesday of August 22nd, thinking, man, we missed the problem. And it was a cloudy day. It was like 70 degrees, 72 degrees. It was a cold day. And yet there they were. So it's not necessarily a warm day, hot day correlation. I can't say that I know much more beyond that. It does not seem to be a correlation. It is like an infection. That, it's definitely an infected reservoir, and it blooms when the conditions are right for it. If we were to go in the evening, I bet we wouldn't even see them like that. They sometimes sink when they're done photosynthesizing at the top. We measure the dissolved oxygen at the surface, and it is, 130, 140, 150% of what water should hold. I mean, they are going at it, right? They're making oxygen.
Do you see any dead fish in the dead rock or the wildlife?
We have not seen dead fish. We had one report of dead fish this year. We followed up on it because, I know that it had been stopped, I believe, by the BLM earlier this year. And so I have been to Indian Creek when we have a massive fish kill, and it isn't pretty. But no, it was not corroborated. We asked the BLM, we asked the Forest Service, and our own crews that visit regularly. We never saw dead fish. We never smelled dead fish. So, no.
And then I'm curious, what's the duration? How long have you been sampling Indian Creek Reservoir?
We have been doing profiles there, not related to harmful algal blooms since the 90s. The last 25, perhaps 30 years. We did used to collect harmful algal bloom, cyanobacteria samples. We wouldn't do it at the shore. We would do it in the middle of the reservoir. We do it at different depths. This is what the water board asked of us. We would identify them by microscope. We would never test toxins. It was not a problem that existed yet. So in 2017 is when the water board first began to be alarmed by this, and it's in 2019 when we changed our protocols and began sampling at the shoreline and doing visual inspections and that sort of thing, and actually adding toxins. So this type of sampling, 2019.
It does seem like a relatively newer phenomenon. Maybe it's not even a new phenomenon, it's just being tested for now.
Yeah,
But it seems like it's not uncommon in many water bodies. Like you said, Red Lake, I've seen one in the Keys here. So I'm just trying to confirm and even just put on the record that, there's no correlation to it being having effluent 41 years ago. There's no correlation whatsoever to that. It's really just a phenomenon that's occurring in the lake, and it's a natural reservoir flushed, 6 years ago. So it's just interesting that we're in the boat with a lot of other kind of standing water bodies.
Yeah, and worldwide, I know Australia is getting hit really hard by it. So
I was on the phone a couple of days ago for a meeting, and there was a woman who sits on the board for an agency down in the San Diego area, and she says they're responsible for managing several reservoirs, and every one of them look just like this. Yeah.
We're lucky that both the BLM and the water board covered quite a bit of the cost of the sampling and testing. It isn't a cheap test to do, and we send it to a lab in Sacramento, and it's also sort of a problem that the numbers aren't comparable depending on how the toxin is measured. So, depending on what we decide to look for, we might get very different results.
I guess just to follow up on Nick's point, do you think this is something that is just simply being tested more now, so kind of the education is greater since 1719, or kind of to the infection analogy, what if the infection commenced in 1719 and now kind of globally we're just dealing with it?
I think it's the latter. A little bit of the former too, but yes, I think it's a problem that is becoming bigger, other than just people being more aware, although I'm sure that's part of it. I know on the East Coast and so forth. We don't have dead dog stories from this coast, but I know there are some.
Yeah, I'm just curious, are you aware of any lake that's been sampled appropriately for, 20 years, 25 years for?
I am not aware of that, no. I know that the water board does have data on some of the other lakes in Alpine County, but they are not sampled as often as this.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Moving on to you, Paul.
Yeah, I'm excited to be able to introduce somebody here today. Danielle Morris in the back, she is the new grants coordinator for the district. We'll have to add it to the list.
Very happy to be here.
Danielle has worked in a couple of different capacities for the district over the years in the accounting department, water conservation, but for the last several years she's been operating her own bookkeeping accounting business, and decided to come back to the district, and we are thrilled to have her back. So we are officially right now fully staffed in that department with 2 full-time employees and a part-time employee for the first time. And so Lynn Nolan is available through December 31st to provide cross-training services, and I've let the 2 of them know that they have access to that entire period of time if they need to. Yeah.
Did you share my list? At the opportunity?
No, not yet.
You told me
I
about
did tell her.
It's very, very extensive.
You're not going to believe this list from Jay Lombo.
There's a lot of money in this.
A couple other quick staffing updates. The CFO position has been posted, and it closes on the 24th of this month. Manager of Plant Operations was posted this week, and it's set to close on the 5th of October. We have an underground repair water position that closes on the 19th, and a pump station operator that closes on the 24th. And we also just posted in-house the new IT position that was approved in the budget process the year. It's called Business Systems Analyst. And Chris wanted to give the interim candidates a chance to go for it first, and so that's posted in-house until the 20th of this month. Then the only other thing I wanted to talk about was the list of GM goals that I emailed to you guys yesterday or the day before. And I got a couple of comments back. Kelly just confirmed through affirmation. Shane had a couple of suggestions. One was to add
You're very popular around here.
on there, so we don't have to do that.
Okay.
And then under the capital improvement plan, he thought maybe adding a sub goal of ensuring that we are, seeking and utilizing grant funds whenever possible for our CIP projects. And so, absolutely, we'll be doing that. I'll add that on there. So I just wanted to go down the list real quick and kind of let you know where we are. The first one was recruit the CFO. As I just stated, it closes on the 24th. Other vacant operational management position, the MPO that I just noted, closes on the 5th of October. Then another position that we're still kind of working on the job description and title for, so that one has not been posted yet. Negotiate labor contracts. We had an initial meeting today with our union representative, and we let them know that kind of time is of the essence because this is a very busy year. And so they know that, and so we're hoping to be able to start that process in October. The compensation study, the RFP was issued, and responses are due on Monday, so we'll take a look at those and get that moving. Develop the board desired capital improvement plan. Julie has got some intro meetings scheduled on that so far. Complete the 5-year water and sewer rate studies. You just approved the proposal for those today, so we'll get started on that as soon as possible. Issuing the new multi-year Prop 218 notice and public hearing. The notice actually doesn't go out until April, but we'll be doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work as well as some public meetings leading up to that. Shelley and I were working on a draft calendar for all those kinds of events to get them laid out just yesterday, and we have an initial meeting with staff next week to go over that. And then just continuing the Tahoe Keys consolidation discussions. Of course, that's ongoing, and the status of that is the phase B of the engineering study has begun, and that estimated duration for that works about 13 months.
So is that just for the phase 3, or is that us actually getting it in front of the board for consideration? Some way to clarify.
That's the complete, the timeframe to complete the engineering analysis of their infrastructure.
We're still out in terms of actual
Yes,
making a call as to whether or not to go that direction.
yes.
Okay.
So that's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, any comments from the board? Okay. I guess everybody can see the past meetings. I guess one thing to call it is our September 21st board meeting is going to be canceled, and I think we're also canceling the ops committee on the 18th.
Yeah.
And then our next regular board meeting will be on October 5th. All right.
I'll send out a notice of cancellation for the September 21st meeting tomorrow. I just didn't want to confuse it with today.
Okay.
We'll do that.
And then Keith, did you have anything before we close it out?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. All right, we're adjourned.
All right, thank you.